This happened 2 weeks ago. I'm Dan, a marine researcher. I returned to a small coastal town to investigate the missing Navy ship from 20 years ago. I had visited before, but this time felt different. The place had a heavy weight. Weathered docks surrounded by streets full of locals who wouldn't meet my eyes. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. On my first night, I checked into an old inn. My plan was simple: find old logbooks or papers that might help. I spent hours in the library sifting through yellowed pages. Then I saw it, a note scrawled in the margin of a logbook. "Not our sea." I paused, confused. Was it a sailor's joke? A superstition? I had to know more. The next day, I started my research along the coast. The morning was calm. I took notes and observed the water as waves rolled in. Then midday arrived, and the fog crept in. It was thick and heavy, wrapping around me like something unnatural. My heart raced as I struggled to see. I heard what sounded like distant alarms. I looked around, but I was alone. Later that day, I visited the fisherman's market. I mentioned the ship, thinking someone would have information. Instead, everyone fell quiet. They exchanged nervous glances. An old man finally spoke up. "You might want to leave that topic alone, son." His tone was serious. I wasn't sure if he meant it or just wanted to scare me. The next few days passed in a blur. I wandered along the coast, trying to piece together what happened. But those alarms echoed in my ears, even when I was far from any boats. I felt eyes on me. A chill ran through me every time I looked toward the sea. I thought about walking into the water, but something stopped me. A voice whispered in my mind, "Not our sea." I tried to ignore it. I pushed ahead with my investigation. But then strange things began to happen at night. I heard tapping on my window. Shadows danced just out of sight. The ocean felt alive, yet warning at the same time. I knew it was just fear, but doubt crept in. Maybe the locals were hiding something. One night I stood on the darkened shore. The fog rolled in again. My heart raced again. I didn't know whether to step closer or run. The water looked restless and angry. Then I heard the alarms again, louder. I spun around. The fog swallowed the beach behind me. Panic set in. I looked at the water. It pulled at me, beckoning, but also scaring me. At that moment, I understood what "not our sea" meant. I wasn't uncovering a missing ship's mystery. I was tangled in something bigger. Suddenly, I saw a shape move beneath the water. My breath hitched. What was it? Curiosity mixed with dread. I felt myself drawn closer. But did I really want to discover what lurked beneath those waves? The next morning, the sun broke through the fog, but its warmth did little to comfort me. I headed to the library, desperate to understand the warnings scribbled in that logbook. Was it a local superstition or a real threat? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was fishing for answers in murky waters. I spent hours searching for more information. Old newspapers reported strange happenings, ships that vanished without a trace, fishermen who spoke of water spirits, or the Watchers. The deeper I dug, the more the town's dark history unfurled. People disappeared near the coast. It was as if the sea itself had swallowed them whole. A chill settled in my stomach. Around mid-afternoon, the librarian approached me. "You've been here a while, Dan. What's got you so intrigued?" Her voice was soft, but I heard the edge of caution beneath it. I hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. "I'm looking into the Navy ship that went missing." She stiffened. "That's a dangerous topic, you know." Her eyes darted to the window, where a few locals watched my every move. "People around here don't like to talk about it." "Why not?" I pressed, sensing the weight of her words. "Some things are better left buried," she replied quietly, stepping back. I felt the air thicken between us. I had already crossed a line. Biting my tongue, I left the library, hoping to find answers elsewhere. I walked to the beach, each step heavy with doubt. What was it about this place that bred fear? The waves crashed against the shore, as if giving voice to my turmoil. Then, out of the corner of my eye, something caught my attention. A glint beneath the water. I leaned closer, squinting through the waves, and that's when I saw it. A metal object nearly submerged, glistening in the sunlight. Panic surged through me as I remembered the old man's warning. Hesitating, I took a step back, letting my mind race. Was the object part of the missing ship? Should I call someone or retrieve it myself? While I deliberated, I heard another familiar sound. The distant alarms. They echoed again, piercing through the calm air, accompanied by the haunting whispers of the sea. My heart quickened. I felt something behind me, a presence tugging at my instinct. I spun around, but all I saw was the empty beach tainted with fog once more. Then I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the unease pooling in my gut. I knew I had to investigate the object. There was something calling me to it, something irresistible. I waded into the shallow water, chills running down my spine. As I reached the spot where I had seen the glint, the alarms dimmed, only to be replaced by a low humming sound emanating from beneath the surface. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. Suddenly, the water churned, pulling me down, as a massive shadow broke the surface. Gasped, realizing the truth. I wasn't alone. Something was waiting for me in the depths, something that wanted to be found. As I struggled against the tide, I could only wonder what the sea was trying to tell me. Would I learn the truth or become another lost piece of this town's dark history? The cold water enveloped me, dragging me downward with an insistent force. Panic surged through my veins as the shadow loomed closer, a shape that should not exist. My lungs screamed for air. I kicked and struggled, trying to break free from whatever held me captive. Just when I thought I would drown, something grazed my fingers. Cold metal. I was drawn toward it as if it had a mind of its own. The humming grew louder, reverberating in my bones. I reached for the object, heart pounding. Gripping it tightly, I braced myself against the pull of the waves. With a surge of strength, I tore myself free, pushing upward through the surf. The light above felt too distant as I fought for every inch. Finally, I broke the surface, gasping for breath. Choking on seawater, I sputtered and coughed, desperate to clear my lungs. The sky opened before me, bright and untroubled, a stark contrast to the chaos below. That's when I noticed what I had pulled from the depths, an old metal marker encrusted with barnacles and moss. My heart raced as I examined it. The faded inscription hinted at its origin. USS Oracle. The letters were barely legible, but it confirmed what I feared. This was part of the ghost ship. The USS Oracle was said to have vanished 20 years ago, and now here I was, holding a piece of its legacy. I quickly turned, scanning the beach. I felt eyes watching me again, and the heaviness of their gaze pressed down like the fog. A small group had gathered further down the shore, whispering among themselves. I recognized a few faces from the bar last night, locals who seemed to know more than they let on. A knot tightened in my stomach. I had to get out of the water, but my legs felt heavy, almost rooted to the sand. Suddenly, one of them stepped forward, a tall man with deep-set eyes and stubble along his jaw. He appeared older and weathered, and as he approached me, I felt both curiosity and dread. "What did you find?" he asked, his voice surprisingly calm, as if this were an everyday occurrence. I held up the marker defensively. "It's from the USS Oracle," I managed to say, but I felt the weight of my own words. Had their fears just been confirmed? He exchanged glances with the others, and I knew I had struck a nerve. "You shouldn't have gone in after it. Some things are not meant to be disturbed, son," he said,
his tone flat but laced with urgency. "Why? What's so dangerous about it?" I pressed, desperation creeping into my voice. "I need to—"
"You don't want to know," he replied slowly, stepping back, a shadow crossing his face. "Not without understanding the price." Then, as if a signal had been given, the group turned away, their hushed voices carried off by the wind. I stood there, the old metal marker heavy in my hand. The feeling of dread mounted. What had I stumbled into? I thought I could handle the truth, but now I wasn't so sure. The last whispers of their conversation lingered in the air. "Not our sea, not our sea," they echoed cruelly. I had to uncover this mystery. I needed answers. But as I walked away, with the marker clutched tightly to my chest, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was only beginning to understand the danger lurking beneath the surface. I stumbled away from the shore, my heart still racing. The whispers of the group clung to my mind. What did they mean by "not our sea"? I pushed through the sand, glancing back over my shoulder as I made for the nearby cliffside path. I needed to find some answers, but that dread was lodged firmly in my chest. As I climbed, the wind picked up, carrying a saltiness that seemed sharper now. I could still see the old metal marker glinting in the sun, and it felt like it held secrets just beyond my reach. I pressed my back against the rocky wall, taking a moment to breathe. My eyes scanned the beach below, searching for any sign that the group was still there, but they had disappeared. I reached the top of the path and found myself on a narrow overlook. The waves crashed against the rocks below, and I felt the surge of the ocean, powerful and relentless. It made me shiver, the vastness of it, the depths that I had just touched upon. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, surprised to find a signal. I had almost forgotten about the world beyond this place. I quickly typed a message to my friend back home. Found something strange at the beach, looking into the USS Oracle. I think I'm in over my head. I hit send and stared at the water, contemplating next steps. Should I tell someone? The locals clearly knew more than I did. As my thoughts spiraled, I caught a glimpse of something unusual on the beach. 8 distinct footprints, leading from the water to the rocky outcrop, then curving back toward the town. They looked fresher than the sand should allow, almost as if someone had just passed through. I hesitated, but felt an inexplicable urge to follow them. Maybe they would lead me to answers. What if they were connected to the group I had seen earlier? I descended the path carefully, my backpack bumping against my back. The moment I hit the sand, I cast another glance to the marker resting beside my towel. It felt like it held secrets just beyond my reach.
Beckoning whisper, urging me to head further into the unknown. I headed toward the footprints, each step feeling like a trapdoor opening beneath me. The footprints led me into a small cove, hidden from the main beach. It was a quieter place, with rocks jutting out like ancient sentinels. I followed the trail until it faded near the base of a wall of stone. As I looked around, I noticed shapes rising from the water, long and stretched, made of sun-bleached wood and metal, remnants of a wreck. Suddenly, a chill swept over me. That uneasy feeling returned, stronger than before. I turned, feeling the weight of being watched again. My heart raced as I scanned the area. Then I heard a voice, low and urgent. "Get out of here." I spun around but saw no one. The warning hung heavily in the air. My instinct screamed for me to flee, but the pull of the wreckage and the unanswered questions surrounding the USS Oracle held me captive. That's when I saw it. A flicker of movement beneath the water's surface, as though something or someone was lurking just out of sight. I froze. The weight of mystery and danger pressed down harder, and I knew whatever I sought was going to come at a price. I squinted into the water, searching for the flicker I had just seen. My pulse quickened. Something was definitely down there. Was it a reflection, or was it alive? I glanced back at the cove, hoping for some sign of the voice that had warned me. Nothing. Just the wind whipping around the rocks and the churning waves. I took a cautious step closer to the water. The footprints I had followed felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the mounting tension in my chest. As I got nearer the edge, the water lapped against the stones, creating a rhythm that could almost distract me from my unease. Almost. Then, without warning, something broke the surface just a few feet from my feet. A hand, pale and thin, emerging like a ghost from the depths. I stumbled back, gasping. The hand reached up, fingers splayed wide, then vanished beneath the water again. Instinct kicked in, and I took off away from the cove, my heart pounding in my ears. I nearly collided with the stones as I ran, frantically looking for another escape route. The air felt heavier somehow, filled with an urgency that made me want to scream. I hadn't seen any signs of life, no birds, no distant voices, just the waves crashing and the unease in my gut. Just as I made it to the entrance of the cove, I heard it again, a soft murmur echoing around me. It was those same words creeping along the shoreline, colder this time. Not our sea. I hesitated, a chill racing down my spine. The footprints remained clear, but my eyes darted around for the source of the voice. So far, nothing. Just the wind whipping around the rocks and the churning waves. I took a cautious step closer to the water. The footprints I had followed felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the mounting tension in my chest. As I got nearer the edge, the water lapped against the stones, creating a rhythm that could almost distract me from my unease. Almost. Then, without warning, something broke the surface just a few feet from my feet. A hand, pale and thin, emerging like a ghost from the depths. I stumbled back, gasping. The hand reached up, fingers splayed wide, then vanished beneath the water again. Instinct kicked in, and I took off away from the cove, my heart pounding in my ears. I nearly collided with the stones as I ran, frantically looking for another escape route. The air felt heavier somehow, filled with an urgency that made me want to scream. I hadn't seen any signs of life, no birds, no distant voices, just the waves crashing and the unease in my gut. Just as I made it to the entrance of the cove, I heard it again, a soft murmur echoing around me. It was those same words, creeping along the shoreline, colder this time. Not our sea. I hesitated, a chill racing down my spine. The footprints remained clear, but my eyes darted around for the source of the voice. So far, nothing. Just the wind. I turned back toward the
water, partially drawn by the sense that something waited for me beneath the surface. But I wasn't ready for that. No. I needed clarity. I needed answers. Head spinning with confusion, I half-heartedly scanned the cove one last time before deciding to leave. I had to warn someone, or at least find help. As I climbed back up the rocky path towards the cliffs, I heard a splash behind me. I turned just in time to see ripples forming on the surface, as if something had just dived into the water. My heart sank. It felt like a warning, like a challenge. Whatever was down there didn't want to be discovered. Once I reached the top, I glanced back at the cove. It looked innocent in the fading light, but I felt the weight of danger still lingering in the air. That was when I caught a glimpse of something white washed up on the shore, a scrap of fabric, frayed and drenched. Curiosity pulled me back despite my better judgment. As I crouched down to pick it up, my fingers trembled. It felt like a final tie to what I had just encountered. I didn't know anyone here. I didn't know what I was dealing with. But one thing was clear. The deeper I dug, the more at risk I became. Then I heard a rustle behind me again. A shadow loomed over me, and I felt a breath on my neck. I turned slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. Someone was watching me. A figure emerged from behind the rocks, a tall man cloaked in shadows. His hair was tousled, and his eyes held a wildness that sent a shiver down my spine. I took a step back, clutching the damp fabric, my mind racing. Was he connected to what I had just seen in the water? "Who are you?" I stammered, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced at the piece of fabric in my hand, then back at me. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low and urgent. "This place isn't safe." I shoved the scrap into my pocket, my heart hammering. "Why? What's down there?" I nodded toward the cove, but he shook his head. "It's not what you think. You have to leave, now." His eyes darted around, almost as if he expected something to leap from the shadows at any moment. I looked back at the cove. The water was calm now, a deceptive stillness hanging over it. I thought of the hand I had seen. "Did you see it? The hand?" I asked, desperate for answers. "Yes, and it means you're in danger." He took a step closer, his voice rising slightly. "The stories, people don't believe them, but it's true. They come when the tide calls." I felt a gulp in my throat. "What stories?" He glanced back towards the cove, his expression hardening. "The fishermen who vanished, the sailors who swore they saw people beneath the waves. It's why the locals avoid this place." I took a breath, piecing the puzzle together. What did they see? What does "not our sea" mean? "They believed it was a warning, a message from those lost," he said, urgency lining every word. "Listen, whatever you found there," he paused, as if recalling something painful. "You can't go back. You can't dive into that darkness. It's not your fight." I shook my head, a mix of defiance and fear swelling inside me. "But I need to know. I can't just walk away." The man's expression shifted from urgency to frustration. "Then you'll die," he said bluntly. "Trust me, I've seen it happen." Panic fueled the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I needed answers, but my gut twisted in warning. "You can't just leave me here without explaining more." He took a step back, his eyes darting nervously toward the water. "You don't get to choose. The sea will take what it wants, and you've become a part of it now." Before I could respond, a staggering wave broke against the rocks, sending salt water splashing onto the shore. My heart raced, and I looked back at the now darkening cove. The man turned and began to walk away. "Wait!" I called, but he didn't stop. He glanced over his shoulder, a mix of pity and fear etched across his face. "You can't fight what you don't understand." As he disappeared into the gathering shadows, I felt a flicker of doubt tighten around my chest. Was I meant to heed his warning? Or could facing the truth save me? That's when I noticed it. A gleam in the water, just beneath the surface, beckoning me closer. Something was calling. I stood at the edge of the cove, the darkness creeping in around me as the man vanished. The water glimmered, a mysterious dance of light that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. I took a hesitant step forward, drawn to the gleam. What if it held answers? As the last rays of sunlight faded, a chill enveloped the air. The tide began to shift, the water restless. I peered into the depths, heart racing. What awaited me beneath that surface? A sudden splash to my left startled me. I spun around, only to find a cluster of rocks standing silent in the twilight. Nothing was there, and yet the sensation of being watched nagged at me. I scanned the shore, the fear mingling with curiosity. Then I felt it again, a tug pulling at my instincts. I stepped closer to the water. As I leaned over, the surface shimmered like polished glass. I reached out, hesitating as I suddenly recalled the man's warning. The sea will take what it wants. Was I about to become another lost story? A sound broke the silence. A soft, almost melodious whisper floated on the breeze. I turned my head sharply, but saw only the darkening beach. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling. No answer, only the distant crash of waves and the whispering wind. Then I saw something shift below. The gleam became clearer, a thin, silver object with intricate designs spiraling around it. What was it? Instinct told me to retreat, but my curiosity was stronger. I crouched down, peering closer. The water rippled around whatever it was, as if reluctant to reveal itself. "Just a little closer," I whispered, trying to calm my racing heart. Then, without warning, the ocean surged. A wave slapped against the rocks, sending spray into my face. I stumbled back, eyes wide as panic set in. The momentary withdrawal of water revealed a jagged hole at the base of the cliff, hidden until now. My breath caught. What if that was a passage? I stood frozen, torn between fear and the need to uncover the truth. Suddenly, the whisper returned, stronger, more insistent this time. It felt like a voice carried on the tides, wrapping around me like a delicate thread. "You need to hear the truth," it beckoned. "Come, find us." The realization hit me like a cold wave. This wasn't just my curiosity anymore. This was something more profound, perhaps something connected with the tragic stories of those who vanished. I looked back toward the path I had come, where shadows loomed heavily now. I had a choice: leave now and heed the warnings, or dive into that dark embrace and discover what the sea wanted from me. With a final glance toward the beckoning water, I made my decision. I stepped back to the edge, preparing to plunge into the unknown. But then, everything shifted. Out of the water emerged a figure, shrouded in sea foam and shadows. Someone was here, and they were calling me to join them. "Wait!" I shouted, heart pounding. "What do you want?" The figure paused, revealing haunting eyes that seemed to hold centuries of secrets. Just then, the ground trembled, and I felt a pull toward the water, as if it were insisting on claiming me. "Not our sea, but yours now," the figure whispered, before vanishing beneath the surface. I gasped and stumbled back as the tide crashed against the shore again. Questions whirled in my mind. Who were they, and what did they mean? The urge to follow was almost overpowering, but a new wave of fear washed over me. I needed to understand why this was happening, and time was running out. I stood at the edge of the cove, my heart still racing. The figure, whatever it was, had left me with more questions than answers. The water continued to roar against the rocks, a wild song echoing the chaos in my mind. Who were they?
What did they mean by not our sea? I had to know. I took a tentative step closer, scanning the water's surface once more. The silver object I had seen flickered in the depths, still and inviting. A part of me wanted to dive in, to reach
for it, but the fear gripped me tightly. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to retreat, to turn and run back home. But what if I left without understanding? As my gaze lingered, I noticed something else. Just to the right of the jagged opening in the cliff was a small, dark cave. It was barely visible, bathed in the shadows of night. I felt the whispering call again, this time mixed with the crashing waves. The cave seemed to beckon me, promising answers buried in darkness. With every passing second, my decision grew heavier. Why was I feeling drawn to this danger? Maybe it was a part of me seeking closure for those who had disappeared long ago, those whose stories had become whispers in the wind. I took a deep breath and began to walk toward the cave. As I stepped over the wet rocks, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I turned quickly, half expecting to see the ghostly figure again. Instead, I spotted something else. Mussel shells littering the ground, each one glinting under the moonlight. There were more of them than I could count. They seemed to create a path leading deeper into the cave. It didn't make sense. Why would there be so many shells? A sudden urge to collect one seized me, to have something with me as a memento of whatever lay ahead. I knelt down and picked up a smooth shell, examining the spiraled design etched into its surface. Then I heard it, a whisper, clearer now. "They are waiting for you." I jolted upright, heart pounding, scanning the cave entrance for signs of movement. Nothing. The words echoed in my mind. Who was waiting for me? The figures from the water? The missing people? The sound of another wave crashing violently against the rocks broke my reverie. The tide seemed to be rising faster than before, as if preparing for something. My instincts flared up again. This wasn't just an invitation. It felt more like a warning. With trepidation, I stepped toward the mouth of the cave. As I reached it, the air shifted. It smelled of salt and something sweet, almost intoxicating. My heartbeat quickened, echoing in my ears. I couldn't turn back now. Just as I was about to cross the threshold, a deep rumble vibrated through the ground. The ocean shifted restlessly, knocking rocks loose from the cliffside. I steadied myself, hands gripping the cave's entrance for support. "Help us," the voice pleaded again, echoing from the depths. I hesitated. What was I getting into? And yet I felt my body inching forward, curiosity overpowering my caution. That's when I saw it. A pale light flickering deep within the cave, pulsing like a heartbeat. I took a step inside, the darkness swallowing me whole. But then everything froze. The voice rang out one last time. "We are all lost until you answer." The darkness enveloped me as I stepped into the cave. I hesitated, my pulse racing, then forced myself to move forward. The pale light flickered ahead, dancing like a candle flame. I shuffled cautiously over uneven ground, the rough rocks digging into my feet. "What are you?" I whispered into the void, half expecting a response. Silence wrapped around me, but I pressed on. The sound of waves faded, replaced by a soft trickle of water echoing somewhere deeper within. As I adjusted to the dim light, I noticed markings on the cave walls. They seemed like symbols, spindly lines and curves intertwining. They could have been ancient or just poorly scratched graffiti. I reached out, tracing one symbol with my finger. It felt warm, almost like it thrummed with energy. Suddenly, a chilling realization struck me. These weren't just markings. They were connected to the stories I'd heard growing up.
Tales of the shipwreck from 20 years ago, the Sea Whisperer, and its crew who had vanished without a trace. Those whispers from the ocean were more than just my imagination. They were the lost sailors, trapped in between worlds. I have to get out of here, I thought, panic rising. But just as I turned to leave, a gust of wind rushed past, filling the cave with an eerie whisper. "Stay, you can help us." I clenched my fists, focusing on the light ahead. "Why me?" I shouted, my voice trembling in the stillness. "What do you want from me?" The light flickered again, and a figure emerged from its glow. I squinted, heart hammering in my chest. It was a man, translucent and shimmering with the same silver hue I had seen in the water. His eyes were hollow, but his expression was earnest. "Find the truth," he urged, voice barely above a murmur. "Only you can set us free." Set you free? From what? My thoughts raced. What truth? What had happened to the ship? Before he could reply, a loud crash reverberated through the cave, and the ground trembled again. My heart skipped. Something was wrong. I could feel the urgency building. The water outside was rising faster now, waves crashing with a force that echoed through the rocks. I needed to leave, and fast. The darkness seemed to close in on me. But as I turned, a sharp sound stopped me in my tracks. A low growl reverberated through the cave, the kind that sent chills down my spine. I spun back toward the figure, only to find he was gone. "Help us," the voice echoed, more desperate now. I bolted towards the cave entrance, adrenaline coursing through my veins. But the shadows shifted, blocking my way. "Wait!" I yelled, panic climbing as the walls seemed to close in around me. My mind raced with the missing crew. The whispers of the lost would linger until I discovered the truth. Time was running out. Just then, I caught sight of something glinting in the dark. A key, resting on the ground as if it had been waiting for me. That was it. Whatever this was, I couldn't ignore it. But before I could reach for it, the growl echoed again, this time closer. My breath caught. I wasn't alone. I felt the weight of the past pressing in on me, and I knew that whatever I found next might change everything. I stumbled backward as the low growl reverberated through the cave, my instincts screaming at me to escape. But the glint of the key pulling my gaze was intoxicating, echoing the whispers of the lost sailors. It felt like I was caught in a tether between two worlds, one with its darkness and the other clamoring for release. "Help us!" the voice echoed around me, now more insistent, laced with an urgency that tugged at my resolve. The ground shook beneath me, sending a cascade of rocks tumbling down. I couldn't stay. I had to act fast. With a surge of adrenaline, I lunged for the key, my fingers grasping the cold metal. As I held it up, a sudden rush of warmth pulsed through me, filling the void of dread that weighed heavy in my chest. It wasn't just an object, it was a lifeline, a symbol of the connection I felt to all the stories and losses that had enveloped this place. Just then, the shadows within the cave surged forth, and from them emerged the spectral figure I had seen earlier, hollow yet full of longing. He stared at me with a mix of desperation and hope. "You have to use it. The truth is hidden behind the door," he urged, pointing to a section of the wall where the rock shimmered like water. "What door?" I asked, voice trembling. "Beyond the markings, the vessel that connects this world to the next," he said, urgency thick in his voice. "But you must hurry. The tide grows restless. If the sea claims you now, the truth will go with you." Heart pounding, I rushed toward the shimmering section of rock. The markings pulsed softly, as if aware of my approach. I pressed the key against the surface, praying for some sign that this wasn't a fool's errand. To my astonishment,
The rock began to shift. A doorway opened, revealing an inner sanctum illuminated by a soft, eerie glow. Inside, the walls were lined with the crew's belongings, old photographs, journals, and keepsakes from lives abruptly cut short. A chill swept through me, the air heavy with memories yet alive, theirs and mine. "Find the logbook. It will tell you everything," the figure murmured, fading into the shadows of the cave. Desperation propelled me forward, and I rifled through the items, frantically searching for the logbook. My fingers brushed against a waterlogged journal, the pages swollen but intact. I opened it as a wave of cold rushed past. The ink was nearly illegible, but readable enough. That's when I found it. The entries spoke of strange encounters at sea, of moments when the water turned glassy, and the shadows below seemed to rise and—
Not our sea. Not our sea. Each word echoed against the walls of the cave, confirming the warnings of the townsfolk. Before I could process it all, the hints of treachery, the whispers of lost sailors, a mighty roar erupted from the water outside, shaking the very foundation of the cave. I grasped the logbook tightly, cradling it against my chest. But as I turned to leave, the spectral figure re-emerged. His eyes were intense, full of empathy and urgency. "You hold the answers, but they will not be without cost," he warned, the shadows swirling around him as if they were alive. "What do you mean?" I asked, the weight of my discovery becoming heavier. "The sea demands its pound of flesh. Speak for us, share our tale. But beware, the truth may fragment the lives you know," he warned, taking a step back as if preparing to dive into the dark waters again. "What do you mean?" I asked, the weight of my discovery becoming heavier. "The sea demands its pound of flesh. Speak for us, share our tale. But beware, the truth may fragment the lives you know," he warned, taking a step back as if preparing to dive into the dark waters again. "What if I don't?" I countered, fear rising within me. "You will be lost, just as we have been. Don't let our torment become yours." With those words, he faded, leaving me alone with echoes of the warnings swirling in my mind. Heart racing, I dashed for the cave entrance. The crashing waves intensified, reverberating through the cave walls like thunder. I could feel the sea's anger, the desperate yearning for a resolution. Before I could retreat, I caught one last glimpse of the cave's interior, my connection to the past, the stories of those who vanished. They needed me, and I needed to embrace the truth. I didn't know the cost, but fleeing now would mean silencing the very voices that called to me. Not just the ones in the cave, but the whole town that seemed gripped by terror of the unknown. As I surged out into the salty wind, the light of the setting sun cast a veil over the water. I stood at the shore, heart racing. There was one last choice I had to make: stay and share their story, or flee and let them drift back into darkness, unanswered. The sea whispered to me, "Not our sea," and I felt the pull to understand what it truly meant. I wasn't here just to uncover a missing ship's fate. I was at the cusp of knowing my own. The shadows lingered. The choices were made. But the answers remained as fluid as the waters that churned before me, waiting for the right mortal to unveil them. As the tide ebbed and flowed around my feet, I took a deep breath, holding tightly to the logbook. I wasn't sure what came next, but I couldn't turn back. I would face whatever lay ahead, even if the truth meant confronting the darkness of the sea itself. Earth's mightiest mysteries often lie beneath the surface, waiting to be revealed.